Hello there. I'm continuing today to talk about the 5 spiritual faculties. So I've already talked about 4 of them, which I presented in terms of 2 pairs. And that was firstly faith and wisdom, and secondly there was energy and meditation. So today I'm going to talk about mindfulness. We all know quite a lot about mindfulness. And traditionally, we talk in Buddhism of the 4 foundations of mindfulness, the 4 foundations of mindfulness. So the first of those is body, being aware of our body, being aware of its posture, being aware of when we're sitting, walking, running, lying down, and so on. I mean, that's a bit mysterious, isn't it? Why do we need to be aware of our body? Well, it's very helpful in terms of knowing ourselves. I mean, our emotions are experienced in the body. When we're tense, when we're tight, when we're tired, it's all reflected in the body. And one thing I found really helpful myself is to notice that if I'm talking with somebody and I have some kind of response to whatever it is they're saying, I can feel that in my body. So let's say, for example, I'm having a difficult conversation with somebody. If I can focus inside and notice the tension, the tightness, the resistance even to what's being said, then I can, with mindfulness, I can relax. I can let go a bit more deeply. And that helps me because I can notice, oh, I'm reacting. Okay, let me just relax, and then I'll listen more deeply to what's actually being said. There might even be a fear response, for example, in us. If we hear something that we don't like or is putting us on the spot, for example. And if we're in touch with the body, we can have a much more positive, creative response than if we're just a bit unaware of what's going on in the body. So that's the first foundation of mindfulness. The second foundation is feelings. And, well, in a way, the word feeling or Vedana refers to direct sensations. And those, if we look at them, are either pleasant, painful, or neutral. So noticing what sort of feelings we're experiencing. And in a way, Vedana, those feelings, it shades into emotions as well. So, yeah, that happens very fast. If we experience something that's pleasant, then we tend to want to grasp after it. We tend to want to perpetuate it. If we experience something that we don't like, that's unpleasant, we want to push it away. So noticing that in our experience is really useful to become more aware of our habitual responses. And that's the start of changing them, when we notice them. So body, feelings, and then thoughts. So knowing what's going on in our mind is very useful. And that might sound a strange thing to say, knowing what's going on in our mind. Of course we do. We know what's going on in our mind. But do we actually? So our thoughts tend to run away with us. And that becomes really explicit when we practice meditation. Maybe we intend to follow the breath. And we're quite determined to follow the breath. And before we know it, within seconds, our mind has wandered away. Maybe we're thinking about what we're going to do later. Maybe we're going over an argument in our head. Maybe we are just remembering something. And before we know it, we've completely forgotten about the breath, and we've followed a train of thought that's taken us a very long way from what we intended. So our thoughts can be very provocative, they can be very alluring, and they're basically what we entertain ourselves with. So noticing our thoughts and the kinds of messages they give us is really important. So, for example, when I'm teaching the Metta Bhavana, I often talk about how thinking is very loud. It turns up in terms of concepts, in terms of images, in terms of giving us all sorts of messages, often undermining messages. And compared to our emotions, it's thoughts that have a very loud voice, whereas what's going on more deeply, perhaps at an emotional level, often has a much quieter voice. We often have to learn how to listen in silence to that very gentle, quiet, maybe quite frightened voice that is in our heart, that more emotional side. So thoughts can be very, very difficult to quieten. But they will quieten, but they'll quieten if we can learn how to not give them too much attention in meditation. We've got all the rest of the day to think, but in meditation we need, in a way, a bit of self-discipline, that we decide that whenever thoughts are going to turn up, and believe me, they will turn up, that we're just going to allow them to pass by. We're not going to get too caught up with them. We're not going to follow them. We're not going to encourage them. So I talked a bit about that, I think, yesterday. So we've got body, we've got feelings, and we've got thoughts. The fourth one's a bit more mysterious. Sometimes it's described as mindfulness of reality. And this really is about our aspiration for enlightenment. If we don't want to use the term enlightenment, our aspiration for freedom. The freedom of being released from suffering. And the kind of awareness we have around that. So it's a bit like having an awareness of something higher, something beyond ourselves, something beyond the mundane, you could say. And we all have that, because we all have questions about what are we doing here? What is the purpose of life? Anyway, I was looking in What is the Dharma, which is a very, very good book by Sangharakshita. I think it's probably my favourite one of his, actually. What is the Dharma? And in that book, he likens us to he likens mindfulness to planting seeds. So you could see ourselves as being like a plant. And what is it we need? In a way, we're no different to a plant. We're no different to any other living thing. So first of all, a plant needs a seed if it's to grow. How is a plant going to come into being? So if we plant the seed, we could see ourselves as being like the seed of enlightenment. Could see it as Buddha nature, that little seed. And how is it going to come into being? What does it need? And he likens that to the 5 spiritual faculties. So he says, if we want to plant, first of all, we plant the seed. And I'm describing that as our potential, our Buddha nature. And then we need the soil. He says we need the soil. And that soil is the circumstances that we've got, We need particular conditions in order to develop ourselves. It's not just going to happen by chance. So putting ourselves within some sort of spiritual community is very useful. Then next we need warmth. And I think Sangharakshita would talk about the warmth of communication, spiritual friendship. And I would talk about the warmth of metta. Definitely mindfulness needs warming up if it's not going to be rather abstract or rather austere perhaps. So it needs the warmth of metta. Then we need light. And, well, we could see that as the light of wisdom, the light of clarity, throwing light through the Dharma on our understanding. And then finally, that seed needs water. And in many texts, we see the Dharma as being referred to as the rain of the Dharma, the rain of the Dharma. It falls equally on everybody. It doesn't discriminate. But each plant that the water falls on, that the rain falls on, becomes itself. It doesn't all become the same. And likewise, the Dharma that falls on us includes our individuality. It's like we are all going to become enlightened in our own way, in our unique way. It's the same enlightenment, but we're all going to, we're not all going to become exactly the same. We're going to become more of ourself, you could say. So I think that's quite a good image for how we as a plant will gain enlightenment. So that's plenty for today, and see you again. Bye-bye.